Okay, welcome to another Orbiter 2010 video, and in this video I am using my Earth to Mars scenario. This is actually a save point from the Earth to Mars series that I made all the way back in August of 2012. And I always intended to come back to this scenario and show a couple of things, but unfortunately I got distracted with a lot of other videos, and I've just never gotten around to it. So what I want to show here is this eject burn that we do to go out to Mars, or really any planet. There are a few things that you can do differently, and some people may wonder, what is the best way to handle this ejection burn. And I just want to demonstrate at least some things that are definitely bad and some things that are definitely better. But as far as like what is ultimately best, I'll leave that up to each individual to decide. Now, if you're familiar with transfer MFD, then when you go to the moon, one of the things you'll commonly do is turn prograde on, and you kind of leave prograde on throughout the course of the burn, or maybe you leave it on for a while and then turn it off. So I just want to show at least 3, 4, maybe even 5 ways that we can do this burn, and you'll see the differences between them. So let's start with the very worst one that you can do. So we're 800 seconds, rather 680 seconds away from this point, so let's warp time forward over there. Now this would be the worst thing you could do. Getting close to the time to do the burn, we'll go prograde. And then as you're getting up here close to the time to do the burn, maybe warp in here. And then right as you're getting up there, you might think, well, let me kill rotate in order to keep the vessel from doing anything. So you hit kill rotate, and now we're burning. We're getting all of our delta V to go out to Mars. Let's go ahead and time warp through this to go through it quickly. And as we get toward the end of the burn, we'll come back to real time. And we're not too far away, so let's go back to real time. And we're watching our delta V. And now let's back off the main engines so we don't overshoot. Getting close to the end of the burn, and let's stop.
Translation.
And let's translate the difference. And there we have it. Burn is complete. But if you look at our plan here, you can see we're way off. And that's because our semi-major difference is 5.34. That's really bad. And if you left it like this and went on out to Mars, you would have some pretty large mid-course corrections to make. Now you can fix this semi-major difference here while you're in, while you're still close to Earth, but it would require a fairly large inward burn to correct that. So that's probably the worst thing that you could do as far as handling this burn. Getting up to the eject point and then hitting kill rotate. And the reason that's so bad is because the vessel has a natural tendency to yaw outward throughout the course of the burn, and that just throws your semi-major difference way off. So let's take a look at another option. Let's exit out. Reload the same scenario.
All systems nominal.
And let's view the escape plan. I guess that's really all we need.
Rotation.
Kill rotate. Now let's get over there. Again, close to the time to do the burn. And let's go back to prograde. And this would be the second worst thing you could do. This is a lot better, but it's still not great. Okay, now we're getting to the point where we're almost at prograde. Let's go ahead and warp time ahead to the burn. And what we're going to do here is we're going to leave prograde on throughout the entire course of the burn. Okay, we're getting close. Going to burn in just a couple seconds here. And burning. Let's warp time ahead to get through this quickly. And right here you can already see that our semi-major difference is lower than it was before. That's because we have prograde on and the vessel's holding itself here at the center position, so it's not yawing outward. So this is a significant improvement. Okay, getting close to the end of the burn, backing off the main engines. And a little more.
Translation.
Translate the last little bit. And there we have it. Now we turn prograde off, and we can see here our lines are much closer. So that's a much better burn. But we're still off. And we have a semi-major difference of 1.121. So as we leave Earth and head out to Mars, we're going to have some, a mid-course correction that would be larger than is necessary. So that's better, but it's still not that great. So let's exit out. And let's look at the next worst option. Or maybe I should say the next best. Let's be optimistic here.
All systems nominal.
Kill rotate. View over the escape plan, and we'll warp time forward to the time to begin the burn. Getting pretty close. Let's go prograde. And what we're going to do this time is we're going to leave prograde on right up until it's just about time to do the burn. And then we're going to turn prograde off. We're not going to hit kill rotate though. That's the key. We're just turning prograde off. And you'll see maybe it doesn't have to be exact, but when you get down to just a couple seconds, turn prograde off, and now do the burn. Now as we warp time forward, you'll notice what will happen is the vessel will have a tendency to yaw slightly inward all on its own. You can see it's no longer at the exact center position. It's yawing toward the center on its own. Okay, back to 1x. And as we're getting close to the end of the burn, back off the main engines.
Translation.
And translate the last little bit. And there we have it. And you can see here that our lines are even closer, and we now have a semi-major difference of 0.5. That's fairly low, and you've actually seen me do this method in a few videos, and there's nothing wrong with it. I would actually recommend this method as being the easiest for people who are fairly new, maybe to going out to Mars. This method's easy, and you can then correct this amount of semi-major difference
Rotation. Translation.
either by using a little bit of inward lateral translation like this, which I'm pressing 1, and that's thrusting out that way and pushing the vessel this way. And as I do that, you can see that's bringing the semi-major difference down. A faster way to bring it down is to rotate -90, which will bring you over to 270. And you can apply some main engine.
Translation. Rotation. Translation.
And that will get you a fairly low semi-major difference without having to overwhelm yourself with trying to yaw the vessel
Rotation.
throughout the course of the burn. So that's actually, like I said, that's the method I would recommend for people that are new, that are fairly new to trying to go to Mars. It's not the best, but of the three that we've seen, it's obviously the best, and it's easy. Now, I'll show one other method that I think is the very best. The best for this style, I should say.
All systems nominal. Rotation.
Kill rotate. Bring up the escape plan. And let's warp time forward again to get to the point where we can begin the burn. And the only reason I don't recommend this method for people that are very new is because it adds a little bit of extra busy work that might be just too hard to keep up with for people that are, having trouble keeping up with things. But once you reach a certain level of proficiency, this is the way to do it. And there are actually two variations of this method, but I'm just going to show one. Well, maybe I'll show both of them, we'll see. Okay, so as you're getting close to the time to do the burn, what you can do, make sure you have rotation on,
Rotation.
turn prograde off, and begin the burn. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to find, I'm manually yawing the vessel inward. I'm pressing Control 1, and I'm trying to find this point where the semi-major difference is going down at the same rate as the delta V. And let me come to 0.1x for a moment to explain this. What I really want to have happen is I want this number to match that number. So right now this is showing 8.7 and that's 3.3. I want to get it to the point where this is basically 3.3 and that's 3.3. So I'm going to have to bring this down faster than this for the time being. So let me kind of try to do that. And I can do that by yawing inward a little bit. But you don't want to overdo it. You can see the semi-major difference is coming down faster than the delta V is coming down. That's what I want. And then once the semi-major difference catches up to the delta V, then I just want to try to keep them in step, keep them close to each other. So let me start maybe yawing back towards center now. So delta V is at 2.5, semi-major is at 4.0. Delta V at 2.3, semi-major 3.4. Delta V 2.2, semi-major 2.9. So it's slowly, semi-major's catching up to the delta V. It's almost caught up. So let me start yawing back towards center. Delta V 1.7, semi-major 2.0. Let me go to 0.1 for a moment. Delta V 1.6, semi-major 1.7. So we're almost caught up. Now they're really close. So now if I can just keep them around this area, then technically the semi-major should be about 0.00 the same time I am at the end of the delta V. Looks like my semi-major is getting a little ahead. Okay, I'm going to start backing off the main engines. Because now the semi-major is it's getting so much lower than the delta V that I want to I want the delta V to kind of catch up. Okay, they're pretty much 1-to-1. And it can be difficult to get it perfect, but if you do it this way, it should be close. Okay, we'll go with that.
Rotation.
Now let me rotate to the center position.
Translation.
And now with a little bit of translation, we can bring the semi-major difference all the way down. And of course we need to also add in a little bit more delta V. And I would say that's pretty good right there. So you can see it's a little difficult, and I was actually getting a little confused there a couple of times as to which direction I needed to rotate. But you can see that by doing it that way, by the time the burn is over, our line is completely, it's perfectly matched up. It takes practice to do that, and it's a little difficult, which is why I don't recommend doing it that way until you've got quite a bit of experience. The previous method that I showed to this one, where you have prograde on and then you turn prograde off but don't hit kill rotate right before getting to the burn, that will give you the best results, and it's the easiest, without having to yaw the vessel on the fly. But if you can yaw the vessel on the fly, then you will have the very best results. Okay, now let me show one last thing that we can do it's quite different than these methods here. And this is something that I first learned by watching a video that Fly Tandem made. And if I can find that video, I'll be sure to put a link in the description. When you get up to your parking orbit for going out to Mars, or again any planet, what you can do,
Nominal. Rotation.
and you want to make sure you have time to set this up, by the way, because it can take a little bit, it can take a while. In fact, let me go to 0.1 for a moment. But we've got more than 10 minutes. It's 11, 12, 13, something like that. That's plenty of time to set this up. Instead of using this view to do the ejection burn, what we can actually do is use a maneuver. And whether or not this is better, I'll leave that up to each individual to decide. It's certainly a little more complicated. The setup adds an extra step, and that extra step, I think, can be very confusing to people that are just learning how to go to the other planets. So if you're just learning how to go to Mars, I would not concern yourself with this at all. I would wait until you completely understand how to go to Mars using just the regular escape plan. But once you understand that, then setting up this maneuver may be worth it. It certainly has one huge advantage, and I'll show you what that advantage is. But what we want to do is turn maneuver mode on, and the first thing we want to do is we're going to add in the amount of prograde that we see over here. This is the amount of delta V that Transx says that we need to get out to Mars. So we're going to add in that number, 3.71. And looks like we've got it right there. Now we're going to come to the date, and this is very sensitive on course, so we're going to go backwards to hyper. And we just want to move this forward until you see this line lay straight straight over top of this one. If you go forward like there, that's too much. If you're back there, that's not enough. So you want it to be straight over top as much as possible. Now when we come forward and look at stage 2, we can see that it's not actually showing us our green ellipse for going out to Mars. And that's because, as FlyTandem pointed out in his video, TransX is prioritizing the escape plan over the maneuver. And the only way that we can get the maneuver to show up is by going through the variables in the eject plan and resetting them. So we'll start here with prograde, and we'll actually, it's faster if you go backwards. So we'll go minus to reset, and we'll reset that. And then if we come to outward, if you have any outward, reset your outward. And finally your change plane. Reset your change plane. Now you can see that we have this green ellipse for going out to Mars. This is our maneuver. And you can see, according to TransX, we're pretty far off. So what we have to do is go forward, or come over here to our maneuver, and we need to fine-tune everything to get this set up. You know, just set up a regular maneuver at this point. So we'll start here with prograde, and we'll see if adding some additional prograde brings down this closest approach or not. And it did, it brought it down a lot. So let's go to a super setting, and let's just keep adding in some prograde. You can see that closest approach has come way down. In fact, it's so low now that I can come forward on this side and I can view the encounter. And now I can start dialing in Mars based on this information, which is more accurate than the closest approach. So let's just go through the variables and get all this dialed in. Okay, that's a little sensitive there, so let's come to Ultra. Now Hyper. And there we're down to 2,500 kilometers. So let's go to the change plane variable now. And we know these are sensitive, so let's maybe start with Ultra. And I can see that plus isn't helping, so let's go the other way. And we've kind of bottomed out there. Now this is the part that starts to take a while, and this is why arguably this method isn't really that much better, but you know, again, I'll leave that up to each individual. So now we have to go through and use a bit of intuition to figure out how to bring this minimum altitude down. If I come over here to change plane, okay, I can see that negative plane change is bringing the minimum altitude down. So what I'm going to do is now it's going back up. So I'm going to keep adding in negative until it actually gets, say, to 2,500. Now I'm going to come back to prograde. And by adding in a little bit of prograde this way, it'll ultimately bring it down a little bit farther. Okay, looks like that's about as low as that's going to get in that range using prograde. So now let's come back to change plane, maybe go to hyper, add in some more plane change. That's coming down. Let's see also if a little bit of outward will save us some of the hassle of going back and forth between prograde and plane change. Start with maybe ultra. And that's not helping, so let's just reset it. So we're going to have to use plane change and prograde. Okay, so we'll add in a little bit more prograde, which raised the minimum altitude. And now we'll see if by the time we subtract some plane change, if we get lower than that 900 kilometers. And we did. And this is where your transx intuition comes into play. I can see that by adding negative prograde or plane change, I reached a point where now it's going up. So I'm just going to keep adding in until I'm at about that number. Now I'm going to go back to prograde and add in one more blast of prograde. You can see that sends it way up. Now back to plane change. And in theory, this should bring me all the way down to the surface. And there we are. Now we're actually crashing into Mars. And I'm just going to keep going until my focus PED is at least 1,000 kilometers below the surface. And the reason I'm doing that is because I know as I pull away from Earth, all this is going to change. So if I'm at least 1,000 kilometers below the surface, then no matter which way it changes, you know, it's going to gain either way. And that's actually good enough. That's not quite 1,000 kilometers below. If I kept playing with it, I would probably get it eventually. But you also have to pay attention to how much time you have. You know, I've only got 5 minutes left until I need to do this burn. And if I miss my opportunity to do the burn, then I've got to go all the way around Earth one time and set a lot of this up again. And that's a lot of work. So maybe if I come back to maneuver and do one more blast of prograde, which is going to send this, you know, again out to 4,000,000. So now I come back to change plane. Let me go to ultra. And you can see now I'm 1,000 kilometers below the surface. That's actually got me about halfway through. So this is what I want. That looks really good right there. So now I can come over here to view target. And we know that this is basically going to be a prograde burn. So let's go prograde. Warp time forward. And then as we get close to the time to do the burn, we line up our green X. And that allows us to burn going out to Mars and have this view target. And the big advantage here of doing this extra step is that it gives you the green X to follow
rotation
throughout the course of the burn, which is easier than trying to figure out, you know, this semi-major difference. I personally I wouldn't go so far as to say that this is more accurate, but at least if you have this view, this is easier to follow. If you want the ultimate in accuracy, let me pause this for a second. If you want the ultimate in accuracy, what you really need to do is combine all this with IMFD, and that's something Dimitri showed me. I can't currently do it, but you know, he showed that it's definitely the way to go. You get everything, get your parking orbit established. You can use TransX to do that. And then once you have your parking orbit established, you can use IMFD's map and Delta V program for your actual TMI burn, your actual Transmars injection burn. And because the IMFD starts the burn for you, it actually has an auto burn. It starts it at exactly the right second, and it ends the burn at exactly the right second. So there's no chance of human error in terms of starting the burn late or ending it early or overshooting. But let's just go ahead and show the outcome of this burn. Let me unpause. We're starting the burn in 3 seconds. And burning. And you can see now, instead of trying to read the semi-major difference and figure out, okay, do I need to yaw left or right, all I have to do is follow the green X. So for this one reason, I do like this method the best. But most of the time, I just don't bother setting it up. A little bit of 10x. And in case you haven't noticed, my throat is absolutely killing me. So I'm really looking forward to finishing this video here in a second. But keeping the screen X in the center is basically the same thing that we would be doing by, you know, anticipating which direction to rotate and yaw for the semi-major difference. This just makes it easier. Getting close to the end of the burn. Okay.
Translation.
And now as I turn off maneuver mode, this isn't going to be right where it's at right now. It'll probably be off, and it'll probably be off, unfortunately, by quite a bit. But nevertheless, that's how to do this method. So there you can see. Turn maneuver mode off, and we're off by 170,000 kilometers. We can
Rotation. Translation.
do a little bit of last second
Rotation.
correction.
Translation.
I'm just tapping 9, and that's bringing the minimum altitude down. And I probably need some plane change, so that's the wrong way. So a little bit of 2. And it looks like I need some inward. Right now it looks like I need quite a bit of 2 and a little bit of 1 to get that down. And I'm going to target one, toward the center of Mars again. And there we have it. So if you want absolute control over your burn, I would say setting up the maneuver is the way to go. But if you can't handle the difficulty, then I would say don't bother. Go ahead and do one of the other methods, which are quite a bit easier, and then save this method for later after you've done quite a few trips out to Mars and other planets. You know, it is worth it in some cases. But like I said at the outset,
Rotation.
whatever is ultimately, quote unquote best, in my opinion, is a little bit, it's a little bit up to the individual. Because as you've seen in, all my videos, I mean, obviously you don't have any problem getting to the target. So setting up all this extra stuff, are you really saving enough delta V during your mid-course corrections to make this extra layer worth it? In my opinion, for new people, no way. No way. But once you've got a few dozen flights under your belt, then this extra layer is probably worth looking at. So that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully it all makes sense, and if you found it a little difficult to digest, go back and watch it a couple of times and try this on your own. And if you have any questions, leave your questions in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. Reload the same scenario.
All systems nominal.
And let's view the escape plan. I guess that's really all we need.
Rotation.
Kill rotate. Now let's get over there. Again, close to the time to do the burn. And let's go back to prograde. And this would be the second worst thing you could do. This is a lot better, but it's still not great. Okay, now we're getting to the point we're almost at prograde. Let's go ahead and warp time ahead to the burn. And what we're going to do here is we're going to leave prograde on throughout the entire course of the burn. And there we have it. Burn is complete. But if you look at our plan here, you can see we're way off. And that's because our semi-major difference is 5.34. That's really bad. And if you left it like this and went on out to Mars, you would have some pretty large mid-course corrections to make. Now you can fix this semi-major difference here while you're in, while you're still close to Earth, but it would require a fairly large inward burn to correct that. So that's probably the worst thing that you could do as far as handling this burn. Getting up to the eject point and then hitting kill rotate. And the reason that's so bad is because the vessel has a natural tendency to yaw outward throughout the course of the burn, and that just throws your semi-major difference way off. So let's take a look at another option. Let's exit out. Now, if you're familiar with transfer MFD, then when you go to the moon, one of the things you'll commonly do is turn prograde on, and you kind of leave prograde on throughout the course of the burn, or maybe you leave it on for a while and then turn it off. So I just want to show at least 3, 4, maybe even 5 ways that we can do this burn, and you'll see the differences between them. So let's start with the very worst one that you can do. So we're 800 seconds, rather 680 seconds away from this point, so let's warp time forward over there. Now this would be the worst thing you could do. Getting close to the time to do the burn, we'll go prograde. Okay, welcome to another Orbiter 2010 video. And in this video, I am using my Earth to Mars scenario. This is actually a save point from the Earth to Mars series that I made all the way back in August of 2012. And I always intended to come back to this scenario and show a couple of things, but unfortunately I got distracted with a lot of other videos,
Translation, rotation.
and I've just never gotten around to it. So what I want to show here is this eject burn that we do to go out to Mars, or really any planet. There are a few things that you can do differently, and some people may wonder, what is the best way to handle this ejection burn. And I just want to demonstrate at least some things that are definitely bad and some things that are definitely better. But as far as like what is ultimately best, I'll leave that up to each individual to decide. And then as you're getting up here close to the time to do the burn, maybe warp in here. And then right as you're getting up there, you might think, well, let me kill rotate in order to keep the vessel from doing anything. So you hit kill rotate, and now we're burning. We're getting all of our delta V to go out to Mars. Let's go ahead and time warp through this to go through it quickly. And as we get toward the end of the burn, we'll come back to real time. And we're not too far away, so let's go back to real time. And we're watching our delta V. And now let's back off the main engines so we don't overshoot. Getting close to the end of the burn. And let's stop.
Translation.
And let's translate the difference.